So this story begins with the launch of Apocalypse 1 many years ago now. And Apocalypse was released with its giant awesome Apocalypse book and two specific model kits, the Orc Stompa and the Imperial Baneblade. On that day, I picked up an Imperial Baneblade because it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Like when you seen a Land Raider on a table back then, it was huge, colossal. So when we saw a Baneblade, it blew all of our minds. So I, of course, picked up a Baneblade. I brought it home that day from launch day and I sat at my parents' kitchen table and I built that thing long into the evening and I was so delighted to have it finished. When I was finished, I brought it upstairs into my bedroom, I put it on a shelf and it sat there for 20 years. Simply put, never came with me when I moved out, and my parents sold their house a couple of months ago and obviously they cleared out the last of my crap that was still lingering, and one of the things that I managed to pull out was my Baneblade. Not only that, but I recently read the novel Baneblade and it also inspired me to finally get this poor miniature kit painted up, get it on a tabletop and roll some dice in anger with it. So what today's video is all about, it's all about getting that Baneblade that I bought day one of it being released and finally getting it painted. So can I repair the damage that a not so experienced modeler did getting this kit built and have it looking like a decent kit next to the rest of my Krieg tanks by the end of this video? Let's find out. Before I get into it though, as usual, it's one of the huge thank yous to all of my active patrons and channel members. Without you guys, I literally could not be doing this. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Seeing a fall off on Patreon, so obviously I'm not providing the required service over there. So we'll be working hard to try and pick up those numbers and give you guys the kind of stuff that you are looking for. If you want to check it out, it is linked down in the description below. You get access to a private Discord server and an extra video every single week if you become either a channel member or a Patreon member. So never been a better time to get involved. Okay, let's dive in and get this tank painted up. Okay, and this is my childhood Baneblade. I actually did once again forget to check the date of when the Baneblade was out. I really need to do that. Hold on, I'm gonna go find out when the actual Baneblade was released. Okay, I am back. This beautiful behemoth of a kit was released in 2007. This has been sat unloved for 17 years. That is an absolute travesty. And you can tell by the layers of dust that it has just been sat on a shelf. So first things first, before I can decide what I'm going to do or where I'm going to go with this thing, I need to clean it. So my first thing I did was I grabbed a large flat dry brush and I begun the very satisfying process of dusting this miniature. I'd love to know in the comments whether you guys think this is satisfying, where it's one of those like ASMR but not sound kind of things. I find like the excavation of this tank from the dust to be very therapeutic. It was very nice to kind of peel back the years on this beast and kind of bring it back to its original gray glory, if you will. Okay, first things first, or second things second after the dusting, I guess. It's time to step up and repair any of the kind of dodgy job I did at constructing this thing 17 years. I would like to believe I've become a slightly better hobbyist in 17 years. So let me go get rid of all the burrs and mold lines and anything I left behind. I then removed the old crew, as this was going to be a Krieg tank, and unfortunately the crew that were in there, although I did a good job of building back in the day, are broken and gone. The heavy stubber is gone. The arm off the commander is gone. I just couldn't be bothered trying to replace any of those. So I just broke them out and decided to change up. I decided to keep the profile of the tank a little bit sleeker. I didn't want to add any extra height to it. So I closed the hatch on the left and I got a tank commander Krieg model from my pile of awesome bits I have lying around for Krieg. And this guy's going to stick underneath. So he's going to stick in it. He's only going to be like coming out of the tank a little bit, which I think is very thematic. It looks really cool. Next, I moved on to the back of the tank and I was trying to see if I was going to fit some filters or anything for the air purification-y stuff. I didn't have the right one left over, which is a little bit unfortunate. I thought I did, so it doesn't matter. I'll make do. I'm going to close up the engine hatch on the right with the hatch of an old ammunition box, I think, from Krieg. And then I have this storage box left over. So I'm going to glue that into place on the left hand side, and I have some of the rare Forge World Baneblade shells. So they used to do a set which is called Baneblade shells, and it literally has the 3 different shell variants. So I'm going to put 2 of them in, an armor piercing round and a standard anti-infantry like canister round, if you will, into the tank box at the back. It's really cool. I'm going to paint them up. It's going to be awesome. Next, you're wondering why I'm removing the burrs or the rivets off of the tank on this particular panel. Well, I've learned from previous experience that it's best to try and smooth off one particular plate the best you can, so you have somewhere to put the name transfer, because I struggled to find that when I was doing the Shadow Sword. If you are wondering how good the Color Forge sprays are, here is an example of the black. It is, look how clean and smooth that black paint is. So very happy to have the Color Forge black spray covering the entire tank, basically bringing it back to its glory. Now this thing looks now like it could have been built yesterday, which is really cool. So it's now time to move on to the actual painting process. If you're curious to know how I painted this tank, because although I will show you kind of a few steps of it, I'm not going to go into great detail about the painting process. I've done about 50 Krieg tanks on this channel now, at least it feels like that. So if you want to go back and find out exactly how I painted this tank, like I said, there's a bunch of other Krieg videos you can, and just follow the step by step. But I'm going to talk more about the kind of the Baneblade that it is. I have recently read the Baneblade novel in preparation, and that has very much inspired this project. And I was also wondering, whilst reading that and whilst I was kind of gearing up and while I was digging out this Baneblade and getting excited about it, I let this happen to me a lot. I tend to find that whatever book I'm reading, whatever novel I'm dragged into, it inspires the hobby that I start to do at that time. And I'm wondering, does that happen for anybody else? The Baneblade novel was a magnificent book, and it very much inspired me. It also decided what I was going to do with this tank, because originally this particular Baneblade was going to be added to my Cadians. But after I read, and they talked a lot about, you know, a super heavy detachment of tanks consists of 4 super heavy, so Baneblade chassis tanks. And I was like, oh, I've already got one for the Krieg. So if I do this second one, and I've got the Stormblade there, if I get that and I do that in Krieg, then I've got 3 of the 4. And I'm well on my way of having a super heavy detachment of tanks for my Krieg. And then that kind of idea just kept spiraling and kept kind of going and going. So, you know, I salute to Mars Triumphant, which is the main character Baneblade from that book. I do thoroughly recommend that novel if it's something that interests you, tanks or 40k novels. It's a great read. But yeah, I would love to know whether that has happened to you before. Has anyone got any particular stories about a particular book that they did read and it inspired some awesome hobby? If it did, please let me know in the comments below. That kind of stuff really excites me, interests me, because the lore to me is super important. It's one of the most important parts of the hobby for me, is the background and the lore. And like I said, it does inspire my hobby and what I build and what I collect and why I collect them. So yeah, I'm guessing there's quite a lot of us out there, but a few cool stories to read would be nice. Now, obviously the thing is starting to kind of come to shape, and I'm very excited by the prospect of it. I can't decide what the 4th super heavy tank should be in this detachment. That is something that has once again pondered me. I'm thinking a standard Shadow Sword with the huge anti-tank volcano cannon of doom, or anti-titan tank. I think that would round it off nicely. That would be 4 very unique tanks. Or should it just be another Baneblade variant, maybe with the alternate cannon on top? I don't know. Like a pair of standard Baneblades and then 2 quite unique kind of super heavy tanks would be a cool way to go about it. Who knows? I don't know. It's just another thing that's been playing on mine as the story and the kind of project itself, it develops over time. Now, I have a sick fascination with Krieg tanks. I do not know how many Krieg tanks currently sit in my tank collection, but it's a lot, and I still have quite a few to paint. So one of these days I will get to play a proper apocalypse game, and I will indeed field all my tanks, and I think it will be a sight to behold. It will make me very, very happy. Now, as we've gotten the blue tones on the tank, which match my Krieg, before I start to do any of the weathering on any chipping on the armor, it is of course tradition to start adding transfers. I love transfers. If you do not love transfers, you are wrong. Please just give them another try. Watch my video on how to apply transfers correctly. Buy Microsol Micro Set, some lamb, some contrast medium, and some cotton buds, and I promise you, you will revolutionize your thinking on using transfers. They're glorious, because obviously a tank is something that's generally 99% the same color. So how do you break up all of that flat, unless you're doing like camo patterns or whatever? For me, this thing is like a dark blue. But once I add the transfers, and I added 22 transfers to this tank on all the turrets and all the hatches and everywhere I could find them, and I tried to kind of, you know, specific honor markings for particular gunners and particular tanks, and I named it. It's called Primus, and I love it. I think it just adds so much, especially to a tank, using transfers. So if you take nothing else away from this entire video except a bit of a giggle from dusting a tank with a brush, take away transfers, and please do give them a go. I promise you, they're in every single Games Workshop box for a reason, because they're so good. Now, with the transfers applied, I can then go on and dry brush the entire tank silver, adding that little bit of chipping and weathering and edge highlighting that dry brush of silver does, and I love it. Obviously, I'm retrospectively speaking to you now about this tank. I've seen the finished product, and I've done it a couple of times now where I've taken something that's kind of old and broken and I've given it some love. And they are genuinely some of the kind of models and kits in my collection now that I cherish the most, because they are things that could have very easily ended up in a landfill, forgotten and unloved. Like, if I wasn't there the day my parents were packing up their house and moving, this might very well have ended up in the bin. And now all of a sudden I give it kind of 2 days of my love and attention. This is what it took to build and paint, clean it, repair it and paint it. It took 2 days. I gave this thing 2 days of my time, and now it's this cherished thing that will be in my collection. Till the day I die, I will own this tank, and it will be field in battle in many games, hopefully, in the near future. And there's definitely a unique feeling to that. Like, obviously you can go out and buy a new kit and build it and paint it, and that's a great feeling, and I'm not detracting from that in any way, shape or form, but there is definitely something about your like long forgotten miniatures. I'm getting that feeling a lot recently when I'm doing the old world, because I'm not trying to buy new armies. I'm trying to dig out my old Warhammer armies, get them cleaned up and repaired and painted, and there's definitely just a different feeling of achievement when you go about that, and I'm definitely getting that from this tank. I got it from a Lehman Russ as well. I've got a really nice Lehman Russ video adding a Lehman Russ to my Krieg army that was very similar. Like this tank, I remember this tank being thrown out. I threw it out. My parents took it out of the bin and must have put it on my shelf again. To me, that was just a sign, pulling this thing out of the dregs and getting it repaired and painted up. So please do check out that video next. It's another heart-wrenching. I do love it. Yeah, please do. If you've got some old kits lying around, things that you haven't thought about in years. I know we all do. If you're watching my channel, the analytics suggest that the majority of people that are watching my videos are kind of between the ages of 25, 35 and older. So we tend not to be the newest hobbyists. We may be inexperienced hobbyists, but we're not the newest. We definitely have some old projects lying around, and I challenge you to dig one of them out and give it your love and attention for a couple days and see what you can achieve. I really think that would be an epic kind of challenge to do on Instagram with everybody, putting it out there in the world. Dig something old out and do a before and after picture of it. Not so much about improving your painting. It's not like those challenges. It's literally something you abandoned and you're finally going back and finishing. I would be super pleased to post up my Baneblade in a challenge like that, or to try and find something else I've unfortunately forgotten and neglected and needs my love and attention, because I reckon there's a fair few bits and pieces. Okay, we're moving into the end game now of getting paint on this particular model. As you can see, I'm spending a little bit of time on the barrels. I don't know why every barrel I paint has to be the red with the white stripe around it. It just feels right. So obviously I did all the blue first, then I was doing all the details on top of that. So I did the barrels. I made sure to spend a lot of time on all of the guns, the las cannons, all the heavy bolters, the demolisher cannon, the Baneblade cannon, making sure their casings were black. All the kind of nice details with silver highlighted and just looking clean and fresh. These are focal points on the tank, the weapon system, so people will look at them. So yeah, obviously when you take out a small brush and you start attacking a Baneblade, it can feel daunting. You're like, I'm going to be here all day highlighting heavy bolters. It's not my fault the Baneblade has 6 heavy bolters on it. I'm also soon going to be moving into the controversial part of what I do with my Krieg tanks. I do a lot of my 40k tanks, honestly, and that's me adding weathering powder to these tanks. Because in a moment I will show you a very clean painted tank. It's still got a little bit of weathering with the way I airbrushed it and stuff. But like the powder for me, just it adds this really nice detail. It makes it look like this awesome war-torn tank. Like, I think this looks great, and don't get me wrong, I'm very pleased with the final result that I get on it. But I love the weathering. Like, if this thing is like, you know, trundling across wracks, firing off cannons and having shells explode all around it, I would imagine it would be fairly dirty and fairly grimy. These guys may hose it off at the end of each evening, but when it's in war, it's not going to be clean. So I love getting weathering powder. I like kind of dabbing it into all the seams and cracks and recesses. And like many people have put comments saying that I go overboard with the weathering powder. And that's fine. I always generally say at this point when I've done it to the clean stage, you can stop here if you want, if you're following along with my tutorial. You can just stop here and have a nice clean tank. That is up to you. But if you want to make it look a bit more rugged and a little bit more like it belongs in a war zone, then you can continue on with the weathering powder. So like I said, I use a lot of weathering powders. I stipple it on into the recesses, all the different positions that I want. And then after that, I simply add a coat of purity seal over the top to hold the powder in place. It adds a really nice staining to the tank. So once again, I would love to know your opinions and your thoughts. Do you think I'm about to go overboard on this Baneblade with weathering powder? Or do you think do you think I should have stopped here? Nice, clean Baneblade. Ready to serve, ready to go onto the battlefield. I think it looks awesome. It's brilliant, but it's a little bit too much blue still. I would rather it be another tone, and that's where I think the weathering powder will come in and add that. Now, the warning about weathering powder is it is an awful thing to work with. I despise using weathering powder, but I love the result. As you can see, I am gloved up. I have put down another board over my painting area, and I'm being very cautious because pigment is like pure pigment, it's pure color. So if you get that on your thumb, you rub it in your jeans, your shirt, you're done. Those clothes are bin, they're ruined. That stain is never coming out. So you do want to take your time and you want to be careful with this. I've put all the turret weapons in place because obviously I want the powder to kind of blend in with those and make it look really nice. And as you can see, I am taking my time, following seams and getting it kind of in the areas that I want. Here is the amount of powder that I like to put on. As you can see, it is quite a lot, but I think it looks really cool, right? That looks good. Does it look too much? You can definitely see that it's changed the whole tone of the tank. I feel like it looks like it belongs in a war zone now. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Please do let me know. And obviously we are now grabbing our purity seal. We're going to go over it with a light coat all over. That will hold all that pigment in place. It will tone down the pigment as well a little bit. And then this is the finished result. This is Primus Baneblade of the Super Heavy, the 13th Super Heavy detachment of my Krieg regiment. It is ready for war. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to paint the tank driver who's supposed to go in a little hatch at the top. But obviously the main turret is not glued on. So I will paint him up, glue him in from underneath the next couple of days. So the tank will be 100% finished off. It's 99% now. Just needs that guy. Couple of still images to give you guys an example of what this beast will look like on a tabletop. I hope you enjoyed this kind of fun video showing something that should have been forgotten or did get forgotten for 17 years. Get some life painted back into it. And just, yeah, making me happy. It was a very like fun project. Okay guys, and there we have it. My Imperial Guard or Krieg Baneblade Primus is now painted and ready to roll out onto the battlefield. Very pleased with the final result. Very pleased to finally have this tank painted up to join the ranks of my super heavy detachment for my Death Korps of Krieg. I already have the kind of crazy plasma shadow sword variant. Really happy with that one. That's another video if you want to go check that out as well. That's done. I do actually have another Baneblade chassis tank which was rescued from the Games Workshop store I used to work in, saved from the bin. It's in a very poor condition and I do have big plans to add that to these two and have a trio of Krieg super heavies very soon. So if you guys want to see that video, please do let me know in the comments below. I have some sneaky plans for some very rare Krieg upgrade parts to make that thing look fairly special, so hopefully we can pull that off. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, ask me any questions you want in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Every single person that hits subscribe, you really do help out immensely, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Don't forget to check out things like Patreon and becoming a channel member down below. Very helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for sticking around at the end of the video. See you in the next one.